Boom. And we are live with another episode of the Brown Water Banter podcast. My name is Jared Seymour.
My name is Joey Cates.
That's right. And in the studio this evening, we got the DMR, man. Another one of our monthly episodes. We're going to be talking with Michael and Matt about the stock enhancement program that they have going on over there. We're going to dive deep into that. But before we do, we're going to thank the people that keep the lights on for us over here at the Brown Water Studio. You know, right out of the gate, 2024 is the year to smile more. Dr. Robbie Williams, right over here at Southern Magnolia Smiles, man. They are located on Washington Avenue in Ocean Springs. You can look them up on the socials at Southern Magnolia Smiles on Facebook and Instagram. And when you're ready to book that consultation and get those teeth cleaned up, just give them a shout at 228-215-1202. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, Taylor & Cox Law Firm has been practicing law on the Mississippi Gulf Coast for over 30 years. That's our buddy Tyler right there. If you find yourself needing representation for felonies, misdemeanors, DUI, family law, divorce, child custody, you name it, Taylor & Cox Law Firm is the one you want to give a call. So give them a shout at 228-696-0111. Rocky Brooks over at, here's it, See the Swamp, man. He's got, one location
Just
now.
one.
Yeah, he's got one location now. I got to change that graphic. He shut the Gaucher store down. The Gulfport store's been doing super well, he said. So he's going to focus on that one. So if you need tackle and apparel, he is a local store. He's slinging kayaks. He's got rods and reels, man. He's busting at the seams over there in Gulfport. It's a really nice store, and it's set up really well. He's got brown water gear over there as well. You can look him up on Facebook, see the number 2 and then Swamp, or give him a shout at, I probably need to update this phone number too, because I think that's the Gaucher number.
It is.
So I'm not going to shout that one out because it's probably not working anymore. But just go look them up on Facebook, see the number 2 and Swamp, or Google them and give them a shout at their Gulfport store and go check them out. And then bringing up the rear here for us is Forever Young Men and Women's Health. This is Kendrick. If you're trying to get back into the gym and you just don't have the energy, you're feeling lethargic and you can't get off the couch, go over to Forever Young Men and Women's Health and let them do some lab work on you, figure out if you're vitamin deficient or hormone deficient, maybe you need some testosterone replacement. Like I always say, he specializes in that for both men and women, believe it or not. So give him a call and book a consultation with him at 228-363-6623 and put your healthcare in the hands of a professional. Let him get him back to where you want to be. That's really quick now for you, Joey. So
I'm
sure
not even. Yeah, go ahead.
You're not even close where you need
not
to be.
even. Yeah.
I will do a recap real quick before we jump into everything. We got the Sheep's Head Showdown that's going to be coming up. I want to mention that right out of the gate. First weekend of October, like we always do it. It's going to be over at Dewey Do Bugs, which is the same place we hosted the Bay Rat Bash this year. We had a great turnout. It's a really killer venue to host a fishing tournament. So we're excited about going back there as well. And stay tuned to all of our social platforms. We're going to start making some announcements about that, sponsorships and what have you, and registration, usually about 2 weeks before the event. That'll go live so you can start entering in as well. Last but not least, if you could download the Brown Water Banter app if you don't have it. It's got all of our content right inside the app. You can listen to our podcast, watch the videos. You can check the tides, the weather, the radar. The Tails and Scales app is right inside of it, and it's free on the App Store and Google Play. So check that out if you haven't already. Tried to buy you a little bit of time.
Go ahead,
Don't
brother.
really know if I helped you out or not, but let's jump into it. So, gentlemen, first of all, thank y'all for being in the studio here with us this evening. We always like to start out by having you introduce yourselves to the guests if they haven't, not familiar with who you are and what you do inside of the DMR.
My name is Michael Lee. I'm the aquaculture manager for the Department of Marine Resources.
Okay.
And I run the hatchery.
Okay.
The Lyman Hatchery.
Okay.
DMR.
Okay, cool.
My name is Matt Hill. I'm the Deputy Director of Marine Fisheries. So I'm over the Finfish Bureau, the Artificial Reef Bureau, and Michael at the Lyman Fish Hatchery.
Okay. One of the coolest things for us doing these episodes since we've been doing them is learning like the inner workings of the DMR. I think most people see your law enforcement side mainly when they're out on the water, and you don't realize all of the different educational and research stuff in the different departments that y'all have inside of the DMR. So it's been cool, I know, for Joey and I to learn that. When I think of hatcheries and aquaculture, we think of Ocean Springs High School and the program that they have over there. Is y'all's bigger in scope, similar in scale? What's the DMR doing?
No, we're much bigger. We're a full hatchery, and we do our best to support the high school programs all along the coast. The Ocean Springs ones come along further than the other ones, but as every school comes online, we support them as a hatchery, whether it be supplying animals, supplies themselves, or just knowledge. Knowledge for them to help them move forward.
Well, give us some backstory on the hatchery, when it started, why it started, what happened, and all that stuff.
So I'm gonna let Michael get into some more of the details, but obviously we acquired it from the Department of Wildlife, Fish and Parks, which is another state agency in Mississippi. It was once in the hands of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So there are some ground rules on what we can and can't do.
Right.
There is a deed that we have to follow. So, but one of the things obviously is stock enhancement, and that's the priority out there right now. So obviously everyone understands about and everybody focuses on the speckled trout enhancement that we do. That's tried and true. We wrote the book on it. Michael and them do a phenomenal job. But now we're moving on to some other species. Mainly right now we're moving to southern flounder. So we had a run at it last year and it didn't quite work out like we wanted. We had a few mistakes, but we learned from them. So we fully expect to have a better year this year doing that. And it's not necessarily when people think about stock enhancement, we're not saying the stocks are in trouble. We're not saying that we need to enhance these stocks now, but in the future we may need to enhance these stocks. So the purpose of these programs, what Michael is doing at the hatchery, we're trying to get the high schools involved. Obviously, what's happening at the Thad Cochran Marine Aquaculture Center through USM over there that everybody's very familiar with. We're trying to write basically a cookbook. In the future, we may need these things. We may have another disaster, hurricanes, oil spills, things like that we may enhancement may be needed. So right now we don't feel like it is needed to the great extent. Mother Nature's taking care of a lot of things for us. I mean, we're having banner years and everything. Nobody can deny that this year.
Right.
But it's not like that all the time. So we're just trying to write the cookbooks, and obviously in the process, animals are being produced. So we obviously release them. There's no harm in releasing these animals into the environment. So that's what we're doing in very large numbers. The numbers have increased over the years. But also out there, we are focusing on research. We have Mississippi State does a lot of research out there. They just came and did some moisture research in one of our line ponds. So we encourage that. Michael does tours. A lot of colleges come out, not just them. Ole Miss came recently. I believe USM schedules a lot.
Yeah.
They also come to the department and we talk with them. But we're trying to use the facility for more than just the stock enhancement. It's to showcase what can be done and to try to get some of the younger generation interested in some of this work moving to the future. So we're focusing a lot on the high schools, and we've encouraged high schools. We've reached out to high schools, and as our schedule allows, we'll do what we can. I mean, obviously they have work to do, but we're encouraging that. And Ocean Springs has stepped up. They've had a phenomenal program. I believe recently we talked with Moss Point, had some success with them in the past. We've had West Harrison has approached us a few times, but we'll do whatever we can to help. I'll just put it to you that way.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was a question I was going to ask. When you say it's kind of hard to ask, it's like stock enhancements in the name, but is that the goal? But you nailed it right there. So it's more than just that. You're not saying things are low.
That's right.
We're trying to help the fish that are most pressured, which initially starts with sea trout, not only here in Mississippi, but in the entire Gulf of Mexico and beyond.
Yeah.
And so, it started a long time ago, but a lot of that is other states were already doing these things and they had these programs in line. So, of course, Mississippi, we don't want to be left out. We want to be part of the help.
Right.
And so that's about 05, 06 when the state of Mississippi and the DMR really started to get involved with the stock enhancement program. And a lot of that started with USM and the building of the new Thad Cochran Marine Aquaculture Center there. So that's kind of where the whole program initially started. And the DMR supported that program from the beginning. And myself and several other DMR employees worked there with the stock enhancement program for over a decade before the DMR took over the hatchery at Lyman and picked up that stock enhancement program. The research lab is still fully involved, but they are a research lab. At the time, we were focused a lot on stock enhancement, but there at the Thad Cochran Marine Aquaculture Center.
Right.
But they wanted to keep up with their research and everything they have involved. That's their biggie, research.
It's in the name.
Yeah, it's in the name.
So it worked out because for the Department of Marine Resources, we were really focused on restoration and conservation. So focusing most of our program there at the hatchery on stock enhancement and things like that fell right in line with our goals at the DMR. So in about 2017, we started doing work up there. The hatchery, like Matt mentioned, was part of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They did a lot of work with stripers, and they did have way back in the 50s. It was a freshwater hatchery. They had your brim, your bass, and people would come and get some and buy some, and and slowly over time, the freshwater interest, as far as Department of Fish and Wildlife, kind of moved to North and Central Mississippi, and they opened up 2 really large, fairly newer hatcheries up there. And so for their stock enhancement purpose of growing stripers and whatnot and releasing, they just decided to do that all up there. And so they were kind of reaching out to find out, how they could use the land. What's the best use for it? And it kind of fell towards us. We were already doing striper work out there with USM. And so after Katrina, then your BP and everything, we the work there slowed down because it was not abandoned, but they just weren't doing any stripers. So they really needed to find a use for that land. So it worked out that the DMR, myself, we were all good to go on aquaculture, how to do it and where to start. So we eased out of USM and the Thad Cochran facility to focus all the stock enhancement, or a great portion of it, out of the hatchery itself, leaving us to do smaller projects with USM and everything involving the stock enhancement, but kind of taking that program and doing the majority of it at the hatchery under the DMR.
Yeah. You mentioned it was freshwater. That was going to be my first question, because it's on old Highway 49, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So how are we getting salt water up there? We're pumping it in. Explain that magic to us.
Shake it in.
We are 100% artificial seawater, even though
really?
The hatchery. Yeah. So we have a lot of ponds, and we've done large and small scale work with the ponds. But the biggest thing that started when I got there in 2017, this place was originally built in the 30s and was pretty heavily used all the way to 80s, 90s. But then, technology changed, but that hatchery stayed the same. Right. It stayed kind of old. And so what I needed to do was start with infrastructure, smaller buildings, tanks and all. You can't just go to ponds. You got to have your tanks for your broodstock adults, and then tanks for growing the larvae before you can even get them in the ponds.
Right.
So they really didn't have much of that at all. Most of it, like, set up for freshwater. So you can put all your fish in raceways tanks and just turn the well on and flush water through. You don't have any issues. You got all the free water you want. So we were going to have to do everything artificial. So I knew needed to start with infrastructure, putting some buildings together with some tanks. And we started doing that. Things were going really well, using what was on site, old, but using our money wisely, right, doing the best we could. And then actually right as we started to up and run in 2020, Zeta came through. So we started about 2017, 2018. Got some greenhouses done, that they had some things there and some structures already there. Got it finished. Zeta came through and pretty much reset us back to zero. But it gave us a chance to put up some buildings, just your basic, some metal buildings that keep sturdy enough.
Right.
And so since then, we've rebuilt our stock enhancement program, and we have on-site broodstock speckled trout as well as broodstock southern flounder.
Okay.
And we can produce right now yearly or monthly. We'll get easily 2 to 3 million eggs produced by our broodstock sea trout. The flounder that we have on site, they don't actually spawn yet naturally in the tank, but we strip spawn them, which is injecting with hormones and stripping the eggs. But we got over 1.2 million eggs out of our strip spawning event with flounder. Males being the point that slows you down with that, because it's harder to get males. They're very small and they don't produce a lot of milk. So we were able to get about 120,000 fertile eggs.
Wow.
From the amount of
that sounds like a pile. Yeah, I'm guessing that's a bunch.
So
that
was our first year last year, and we're expecting really good things this year, because we just, as of this month, finished our new larval rearing system. So we've got our tank set up. Last year when we did strip spawn flounder, we had to do our larval rearing in the same building as our brood stock. That's not ideal. You want separate buildings to do these processes, but we had to work with what we had at the time.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot and did that in conjunction with the Gulf Coast Research Lab. And we split the 60,000. But we did that work up at Lyman, all the strip spawning and everything. And so that gives us sea trout and flounder, the two big ones on the coast that people are really interested in. And now we've got a good foundation, our brood stock's in. And so now we move forward with other things and really start to pump up our numbers and our sizes and our approach to stock enhancement of the species we choose to do.
What can one of the things that we've done on these episodes is kind of get in the weeds on some things, and it turns out really cool. Can you take us on, even like with the flounder, like from start to finish, like can you walk us through that whole process of that, like, because
Sure,
we're outside looking in, like I don't know how any of that goes.
I just catch them and eat.
Where do you start with
even with flounder and sea trout? It's pretty basic. So you go out and you collect brood stock, and people think, all right, you want big fish. Well, not really. Sea trout live about 5 years, flounder about the same, but maybe a little longer. But if you grow them quick, they grow quick. We feed them well and vitamins and things inside the tank. So
how big a tank we talking?
The 6 I have are 18 by 5 foot deep, 18 foot in diameter by 5 foot deep. These tanks have lids on them with lights, so the photo and thermal cycles are controlled by us. So
day and night,
day and night, and the water temperature is basically done to mimic environmental conditions.
Right.
So longer summers, warmer water, shorter light for the winter, colder water, because flounders spawn in the winter. So it works out because we have a summer species we've got one more run we're going to start of sea trout in the next day or two. That'll be our final one. And then we'll start conditioning and getting everything ready for flounder to strip spawn January, turn of the new year.
So y'all could pretty much mimic what's going on out there.
That's exactly what we're doing, making the conditions for what they need. And so flounder, and keep that in mind when we talk, so we're kind of a little bit about all the species. With flounder specifically, go out, collect the brood stock, bring them in, run them through a quarantine procedure. So you do your deworming, and then you hold them separated for 30 days to quarantine for parasites and everything. Once they've gone through the quarantine procedure, you then move them into their brood stock tank or wherever their next place is going to be. The biggest part of all this when you bring fresh fish like this in is transitioning them to eat, because normally they're eating their live feed and all.
Oh, not eat them. Eat
no, just eat your raw diet, your shrimp, cigar minnow, squid, whatever you're feeding them, but dead. So you kind of have to train them and work really hard to get them to learn to eat in a tank. And you have your tricks along the way that we've learned. But after that, you move the healthy fish and everything over. You do things as you move them. You try and sex them. You pit tag them with numbers so you know which fish are which and everything about them. So
is there structure in the tank?
No, everything's just an empty tank.
No, like
just plain empty tank.
Just swimming around.
The biggest thing
no
about
sand
tanks,
for the, what I'm saying? Like,
no, you can't really get involved with that with filters.
Right. So that's got to be a shock to the fish, right? Because that's not his environment. Right?
It is. It's not an environment, but fish really care about eating more than
that's all he cares about. Okay.
So if you get them in the tank and you train them to eat and be happy, and there's other fish in there, you've got them in there for one purpose: to be happy and to produce eggs.
Right.
So the structure doesn't really affect them. Three
No
squares.
predators in there, right?
Predators,
so they're not
3 squares a week.
Well, they never knew structure from the beginning. So that's all they ever knew.
He caught them in the wild, right?
Yeah,
so they were
the broods.
The breeders.
Yeah. And so eating. As long as you get them eating, they're happy. They're waiting at the window. Every feed, that's a happy fish. They're ready for you.
Okay.
And so you'd like to have your fish at least 6 months or more on site before you plan on getting any eggs from them. That way you can condition them to the tanks and everything, but just to get them into the cycle of wherever you're at the hatchery at that time. So once you get them in and you condition them and you get them on cycle for the sea trout, they're on their own. They spawn in the tank, and eggs get collected out of the side of the tank because you have them in salt water. When they spawn, they become buoyant. They float to the top, and the eggs will skim out the tank.
Really?
Yeah. And so flounder, same thing. They're just in that tank with the conditions getting right. And, flounder are flat. So as it's almost time to strip spawn them, you can tell just by looking in the tank at the females. They become very gravid, which means they swell with eggs. So if your fish is flat and it swells, it looks like it swallowed a baseball, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You can look and tell that the fish is ready or getting ready and coming along. And at that point, it's for flounder strip spawning, collecting the eggs, fertilizing them. And then at that point, you move them to incubators where you hatch the eggs out over several days. And then at that point, you take the hatched eggs, move them into what is a larval rearing tank. And so whether it be flounder for 40 to 50 days or sea trout for 20 days, you have to feed them live animals for the first 20, 25 days of their life while you train them or wean them onto dry feed, because they won't eat dry feed fresh out of losing their yolk sac and such. So we produce live feed on site, things that are called rotifers, which are just zooplankton, little bugs. We grow those on site by the hundreds of millions to feed. And then we also do brine shrimp, sea monkeys, or artemia. And we do those on site. We actually get the cyst from salt lakes and things like that, but hatch them on site, enrich them on site, feed them to the animals on site while we train them to get on dry feed.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable that you could do that in Lyman.
Right.
Way up in Lyman.
And once it starts, it's not necessarily 24 hours a day, but 3 feedings a day, 8 times apart. You can't just throw it all in the water. You have to feed them several times a day.
All right. So once you get from the brood stock to reproduce, and then you got your new batch that you'd have to train to eat. Not, first you got to start them on real food, then get them on. Do you then get new fish from the environment, or does the cycle just continue?
Well,
internally?
those would be released. Your brood stock, you try and swap out about every 3 to 4 years. You want to keep redoing the genetics.
Okay.
So at Lyman, we have 3 tanks of sea trout that are spawning, and we have other tanks with backup sea trout that we just continue to rotate. You're always rotating your brood stock to change genetics.
So anything born there is getting shipped out, and you're always getting new stuff from the Gulf.
Everything produced is released.
We'll release it, but what we did different last year is, so everybody's used to these releases with these huge numbers. We released 120, 130,000. Well, we're talking about fingerlings.
Right.
I mean,
right. And how many of those are going to make it to?
Yeah.
So what we did last year, our chief scientific officer, Rick Burris, and myself, we had some conversations with Michael, and we had some conversations with some people at the Thad Cochran Center over there, and we tried something. So we did a little bit of research, and we were seeing where Florida was very successful. They were raising these fish up to 3 to 5 inches and releasing them. But I mean, there was still no documented evidence that it was doing any better. But we said, hey, let's try it. I mean, it makes common sense. We raise them up a little bit bigger. So we talked with Michael, and I think in the beginning we were in the 8 to 10 inch range. We said, hey, Mike, let's try to raise these things up to 8 to 10 inches. Not all of them. I think we kept a couple thousand of just a portion of them, but obviously we released the rest, and we kept them when we grew them up, grew them out to that. Some of them were too big because obviously, we're in Lyman, and even at the Thad Cochran Center, it's a little bit of a ride, but you can grow them out fairly easily, but you got to transport them.
Right.
So transporting them became very difficult when you can only put a very limited number in the fish hauler to get them to the water. So you really haven't done any good. So now we've scaled it back, and we're in the 6 to 8 inch range. Going to see how that works. I mean, a lot of Michael was documenting a lot of scale loss in the tanks just because the fish were so large, and you're trying to pack them in there.
Right.
So now this year, obviously, we're going to cut back a little bit. We're going to do much smaller releases. So that's the thing people got to remember. They're seeing these 120, 130,000 fish. Well, it may only be 200 or 300 fish, but it's stronger. It's stronger fish that possibly may have a better chance of survival. So we're trying at it, and it's just it's an experiment. I mean, like I said, obviously we have it down pat on how to rear spotted sea trout, how to produce. I mean, we got that. It's not a problem. So we can. It's a facility limited number. That's the only thing that limits how many you can produce at the moment. But how many can we grow to this larger size? And then we tried some new tagging techniques, and I'll let, because he's much more familiar with it. But we were putting the dart tags in them, and you have a lot of tag loss and things like that. But we tried some dyeing techniques this year. I'll let Michael talk about that because they were very involved in it. But we're trying to get people to want. It's much more visible. Like I said, these fish are larger and the dart tags are falling out. But these we're basically putting a dye in their caudal fin. So once they get them, they can. It's going to be a color, and we're doing a color every year. It'll be an orange or like orange stripes or red stripes. But I'll let Michael elaborate.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Is once you release, what is the tracking process to see how they're affecting or where they're going?
Monitoring is always the most difficult part,
right?
And sometimes very costly. So for years, we tagged many hundreds of thousands of sea trout with a coated wire tag, which is injecting a small piece of wire into its cheek muscle. It's hard to find things to do because the fish are small. You can't inject anything in the flesh that could be eaten later or anything that you have to find a location that's more than likely not going to be eaten.
Right.
So we would do that. But then the monitoring was difficult. The machines were expensive and just really hard to get the word out for it. And so we did it, but we just didn't have the results for monitoring that we wanted. So tried lots of things with your dart tags. Like he says, you got to grow them a lot bigger for those to go in and hold. They don't hold well in sea trout at any age because sea trout don't have scales necessarily like your red drum and things like that. It's just that skin. And other fish will bite them. They'll get pulled out, or they'll simply just get covered with so much stuff you can never even read the information off of it anyway.
Right.
So a lot of that that everybody does everywhere, but you're trying to get, I felt they were trying to get too much information. And so what Rick and some of the people at DMARC decided to do this time was a VEI tag, and it's a visible elastomer implant, which is basically just a plastic that you add curing agent to. Once it's out, it hardens, just like any type of fiberglass resin, stuff like that. So you have to grow the fish a little larger. We found out if it gets about 6 inches, there's enough flesh in the caudal fin of a 6 to 8 inch sea trout. With a hypodermic needle, we can get inside the tail and leave a trail of plastic. So it's actually in the tail. You have to get the hypodermic needle somehow inside the tail, thinness of the tail, pulling it out and leaving a trail of fluorescent colored plastic in the trail where you remove the needle. So we've been trying to do 2 1-inch stripes in the tail of the fish. They're not all perfect, but as long as we can get a good mark, because there's no other reason there should be a fluorescent plastic mark on that fish, and do as many as we can. So you got to think we were in just simple numbers. We were thinking the other day, if somebody can do 1 fish every minute to 2 minutes, then that's only 30 fish an hour for one person. Even if we line up 5 people going at it,
that ain't a whole lot.
In 4 hours, you've done enough, but that's about a hauler full. So when you start thinking about people like, well, why not tag 10, 20,000? You just have people sitting around all day doing nothing and that. So you just have to find that sweet spot where you release a lot of small ones to help, that end, keep the numbers, because cost beyond that day 30 to 48 range goes up, survival goes down in the tanks. So you're just battling that the whole way. So with this visible elastomer implant, we can change the color each year. So this will be our 3rd year yellow. We've done pink and we've done orange, and this year will be yellow. What it tells us is simply year to year, but the biggest thing is that fish recruited into the stocks. And we have very little information that, that's happening. You can, we have genetics, but you'd have to send people out all the time, taking fin clips, run all that.
Right.
This is a process now that if a person found a fish, they could look and say, oh, I've heard about that. I think this is one of their fish. we would all the information we need, and we're going to get out to where people know where to contact, have numbers at bait shops and things and online. But people could simply call and say, hey, I caught one of these. It had this color. This is where I caught it. We know where we release those fish and what color tags we use year to year. So it would simply tell us this fish was released, we released near to that site that the fish caught, or maybe not, that's good too. But we know exactly what year. And at that point, it's 6 to 8 inches when we released. Odds are a full year has gone by before they could hook and line catch it. You're going to need that growth of that full year. At that point, that fish has recruited into the stocks,
right?
Wild stocks. So if we simply started with that, knowing that, hey, if we do grow them larger, we know for sure that if they do well, they could recruit into the stocks. Maybe that's the best approach. But really just getting back those first reports would be huge. You know? Then we know we can have success, and we can have an impact, and it's successful. So that's the basic information we're trying to look for right now. And it's so easy for the public to be able to tell that this fish was released from the program.
Well, I'm intrigued because I didn't know anything about this. So I've probably numerous trout where I just throw them in the, if I'm wade fishing, boom, I don't even look at the tail. You know what I'm saying? And now that we know it, we can start paying attention to it.
On your collection and reporting, is it going to be mainly the public, or do you have in your agency?
It'll be a phone number and a website.
It's mainly, obviously if the public catches it, I mean, there's a number and a website. I think actually right now it's going to Michael's phone at his at the hatchery. But
we noticed y'all do that. I like that. It's a very personal touch.
And obviously we look for them in our all of our sampling that we do, our routine independent sampling that we do through the agency, our gill nets that we run, all of our seines that we run. Obviously, we're looking for those fish. I mean, we're a little probably because we know they're there. And the main thing is there's really no, not even across the Gulf, there's no very reliable documentation of, and like I said, I don't want to come off that enhancement's not needed, but we also, even if it is needed, we also need to know that the techniques that we're using are working.
Right.
So
science is tough. It's not easy.
Some of these,
good science.
You get criticized for, now you released 200,000 last year. Now you're telling me you're only releasing, 5,000 this year. Well, those 5,000, at some point we may say, hey, we do keep these fish for this long. We release them in this area, this time. I mean, try to get that specific is the experiment. I mean, is how are you most successful with the funds that are available and the staff that's available, and because funding changes, and that's what everybody else says. Sometimes we have very stable funding right now, but in the past we have not had and in the future we may not.
Who knows?
So you have to get creative and figure out raising. You're always going to have the numbers because a batch is a batch. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of fish, and we're not just going to keep them and throw them. We're going to release them, but the question is now, is it worth holding a percentage of those back, spending the extra time, spending the extra money, growing them out, and what size to grow them out to, and releasing them at that point? Not just with spotted sea trout. I mean, this will come with every other species that comes down the line. The efficiency.
How many finding them? Have you found some with the plastic already in that? Have they been reported?
We have not. There was some mention on on Facebook after we did our first posting about releasing these fish, showing the tags. Some, a couple of people, hey, I think I caught one of those here or there. I wish I would have known. So the biggest thing now is us getting the word out. And the first time was in 2023 that we did some. And we really didn't immediately put anything out because they're 6 to 8 inches. Most people weren't going to catch them. And then we did some last year and then started to get the word out first with that Facebook. So our 2024, we'll call it a 2024-25 batch. We're about to start within 2 weeks, and we're going to try and tag between 5 and 10. And that'll be this year's batch. Always at the end of the year because we started the season in April, May, so it takes us 6 to 8 months to get these fish to taggable size.
Is there a picture on your website of the actual?
That's what I was looking for.
There
to where it looks
is. You
like?
got to kind of scroll through quite a ways down the little Facebook post page pictures to find one.
And that's one thing we're going to try to work on. Obviously, we've had conversations about it. In the first year, I'll just be completely honest. I mean, it was an experiment. We didn't have a lot of confidence. I mean, we didn't. It was trial and error on the injections, on how well the injections would show up. So try to be very careful in what we put out. I mean, this year we're much more confident that we're going to tag enough fish and the technique will be there to where we are expecting some type of return on that. So that's going to be on us to do a better job of putting it out to the general public. But the first couple of years, it was an experiment.
Yeah.
So now we're feeling a little more confident with it. And I also do want to reassure, one of the things that we've done differently in recent is we do.
Is that it right there?
Yeah, that's it. Not to interrupt, but it's you. I don't know how well it is for people on the live seeing it, but if you go and I'll actually download this photo and put it in the comments.
That's the pink. So that would have been the first year.
That would have been the first year.
That's very noticeable if you catch that fish and
if you catch it, and that's
extremely noticeable.
They always say you could use black light, but you can see it plenty good in daylight as well.
Yeah.
And that's the first year we've gotten a lot better.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, if you looked for it, you'll see that. Is it on both sides?
You can see it from both sides because the tail is so thin.
Okay.
And so that would have been the first year. And that's probably me telling them, just make the longest one you can. If it doesn't work out, put another one.
Right.
And then we started to think, let's just go ahead and do two in each one to help with so we try and aim to do 2 1-inch best we can stripes.
If I would have seen that and not known, I would have thought that the trout mated with one of those glow in the dark fish from a tank. And I've been trying to figure out how that happened, because that's what it looks like.
But hopefully it'll be enough that, when you look at it, well, that's weird.
It's definitely noticeable.
And so, like I said, and just the simple information of, if you had more, like how big it was, and we don't need the fish, we don't need anything. We just want to know basically where you caught it, and that helps us out a lot.
And let's go ahead and say, where's the best place to report that? Do you have a number that we could shout out, or a website? Is it just your website?
It's
your office number.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
like I know
my phone's about to blow up.
228 523-4006.
Okay.
So that's 228-523-4006. And I believe we set up a email address.
There is an email, and it goes to the
It goes to the hatchery.
It's the hatchery email.
It's
hatchery.
Yes, it's wouldn't be MDMR.
DMR. I think it's DMR hatchery. There is an email. We can get that.
We'll get it.
Yeah, just shoot it.
We just set that email up.
We like 2 weeks ago. We actually set.
Okay.
I could look. I didn't want to bring
all you
the
gotta do
phone
is just
in.
shoot us a message somehow, some way, and I'll drop it in the comments here, or I'll link it in the.
But the plan is to have this posted, bait shops, boat ramps, all the other places.
A little bit more. Yeah, like I said, we did obviously, with the questions, obviously y'all are asking, and we have received some. Hey, because people did know about this, obviously, that we work closely with. Basically, you need to do a better job of getting it out, and we do, we do, but we didn't have a lot of confidence in it.
Right, I understand that.
Now we do have some confidence in it, so we're going to work on that and do it. But then that was on us to do a better job of getting it out. But the first hurdle was, we got to make sure we can make this work. I mean, we didn't want people just running around looking for this. And
we could
now we're a little more confident.
We could sync it up with some kind of brown water contest or giveaway or something. If they can take a picture with these glow in the dark fish.
Never caught one.
Yeah, and we'll see if we can't help make people want to share it.
In the first year, I think we only did 300 to 500, and so like I said, this summer right about now would really be. Those right about now would be definitely of size to catch. The ones we did late 2023, maybe not even be, or the ones we did in 2022 would be catchable now.
Okay.
Probably fine.
And what color would that be?
That would be purple.
Okay.
And then 2023 were orange. I think we did about 1,500 fish in 2023. Those are just now be about catchable to be reported to catch on the line, probably at about, 12-inch, 14-inch fish. So, we're immediately when we take up this,
there's a pile of them out there. I can tell you right now, that'd be the ones you'll catch, them 12 to 14-inch
and
fish.
So hopefully we can, like I said, try and get somewhere over 5,000 tag this time and have a really good reporting information out there for people to get in touch with.
I think you might be onto something here. I mean, if you could connect people's wanting to catch fish the way people collect baseball cards and sneakers, and
it's kind of like the
bragging rights, like we could be onto something here,
like
really getting people to target
the star. CCA Star.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They do it a year long. They tag a redfish. If you catch the redfish and you're registered in the Star tournament, you win $5,000,
right?
Whatever it is,
right?
Yeah. So you can do some stuff like that to kind of get pique the interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're really going to ramp it up. Like we've been working a lot on infrastructure as well. I know it seems pretty simple to set up a line for tagging, but it seems like we tag the fish and then immediately we're building another tank.
Right. Oh yeah.
Ready and all. But we're there. We're at the point we're monitoring now and putting the numbers out that's going to be one of our biggest priorities.
Yeah.
And so within the next month, as we continue to tag or start tagging these, hopefully up to 5,000 fish, then you're gonna if you look, you're gonna easily be able to find out where to report that information.
Hit me with the specifics on what you want to know when the person, like if we call in or email in about that
specifically where you caught it and what color the tag was.
Okay.
We'll be welcome to
Back Bay pink. That's all you really need to know.
Yeah,
right?
We'll be welcome to take pictures, because you gotta believe, regardless of how much we like fishing and we want to help, a lot of people are very nervous about reporting.
Oh yeah.
Things that they've caught.
Yeah.
So, if you let them know, I don't want the fish.
Yeah.
You don't even need to give me the size.
Yeah. Y'all don't care about the size. I would figure you would.
If you want to give me that information.
Right.
And that's up to them.
Will you kind of be able to guesstimate, like if it's the pink, it should be this big or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just don't want to scare people off.
Right.
They're like, it was 14 inches.
Well, that doesn't mean
you're
correct. Well, and that doesn't mean you kept
for that.
Right.
It didn't mean you kept it, right? If I report it's 14,
right.
it's
and
like,
I'm
I
not
didn't
going to
keep
ask
it.
that.
Right.
I'm not worried about that.
Another issue is we don't have like I said, we're saying 6 to 8 inches. So in a scientific world, science is they want exact. So these fish are so fragile, and we can't, we don't have an exact measurement on that because we don't have a number associated with it. All it is color. So that fish may be 6 inches, it may be 8 inches. So we do what we would like to know.
You're talking about when you're trying to predict what it would be next year,
so
after that.
So if you tell me that hey, I caught this fish, it's got a purple tag in it and it's 14 inches, that's great. But I don't have the baseline of what it actually was when we released it. I have it. It was between 6 and 8 inches, but I don't have that particular fish because it doesn't have a number associated because we're not tagging it. We're just they're basically putting the plastic in there. So to identify, it was released this year. It was a hatchery release fish. And that's the basic, like I said, some of these tags have gotten to where they try to get so much information, but with this particular program, we don't even have the basic information of, are we being successful with the releases of these fish, what we're doing? So we're just trying to get recapture. We released them this year, and there was a recap. We're starting from ground zero. Is this working?
So what would be in your mind, perfect scenario? How many numbers are you looking to get back reported back to you? What would be solid data for you? 20 people reported, 100 people reported.
Well, it depends on the numbers that are released. So right now, if we got 3 to 4 people that reported, we've only put out roughly 1,200 fish. So 1% would only be 12 people.
Yeah.
So if you got 1% of
right.
what you release, and when people talk spawning and sea trout, they're assuming, they guess, you'd be lucky if 1% of a spawn survived.
In the wild,
that's why
like
in the wild with the heavy numbers, that's why they spawn in such large numbers. So if we only put out 1,200 fish and 5 people reported back to me, then I feel confident that 1,200 100 fish of that size, if we've got this many back, the other ones had a really good chance because they had a head start with their size,
right,
and everything. So you also have to think that's 1,200 fish, 3 counties. We release at all different sites.
That was my next question. Are y'all doing the same sites?
We have a good solid 8 sites that we kind of release at. We make sure they have a good habitat for the size that we're releasing, and they're released in public places. We don't do any personal launches or anything that they're also all from public boat launches or somewhere that anybody could have access to. So 1,200 fish scattered over the entire Mississippi Gulf Coast is thin. So if you get a few back, you got to feel real confident that you're having success and that the size of these fish are making an impact, and some of them are recruiting. So that's your main goal. Are we recruiting? I could get into things later. If someone caught a big one, we caught a big one, and they actually brought me the fish, then you open it up. Are the ovaries good? You know, did this hatchery race fish produce ovaries, or is it producing milk as it should? You know, what's its diet? Is it, you know, obviously it's eating and so that would be big, and you could learn a lot from that. I mean, that would be so much. Hey, we had a fish that we grew. Somebody caught it. We cut it open, and it's producing fertile eggs that can be fertile and everything. This is a fish that has recruited into the wild and can produce other fish.
And that's a success.
Right.
Just one. At this point, just one to get that kind of through the whole process, because we don't have that. I mean, not saying it doesn't happen. We just don't have that documented. And that's what we're trying to do, is document. And the techniques that we're using, are they working, or is there something that we may, or Michael and his team could change to give these fish a better chance? Is, you know, at some point you would like to think that you would get down the road or some systems better than others. Like I said, right now, that was one of the big criticisms that came in the past, is they were all got dumped into one place. And I'm not sure, I wasn't part of it then, but now we try to spread it out. I mean, it's all 3 coastal counties. I mean, we can't, you know.
Those fish are going to go where they want to go, right? Even if you dump them all in one spot.
Chandelier,
but we try to, you know, all the release sites are, you know, we're including all 3 coastal counties in the release sites. But there are some limiting factors. I mean, you got to kind of, you know, use some common sense when you dump these fish out. I mean, you want them to have some kind of cover. So we do look for, and for example, Fort Bayou is a great place to release fish. You have some deep water area right there. You have marsh very close. Bayview Avenue right by our office is a very good, you know, but there are some areas that are just not conducive to releasing fish. It's not that we don't want to, it's just you got to use a little bit of, whether it's true or not, some common sense on the area that you do it. So
I like it. I think it's a cool program for sure. What do you learn, like, when you watch these fish in the tank? Are they? I remember Brian telling us, are they aggressive inside?
Sure,
the
the
tank?
speckled trout eat each other.
Right.
Very great. You are, the entire time you're raising speckled trout, you're trying to feed them so much
that they won't eat.
They don't eat each other. You're gonna lose probably minimum every run 50% of your fish due to not necessarily cannibalism because of the size of them, but aggression.
They just bust each other up,
bite each other. You know, they have their teeth form day 10, day 11.
Dracula teeth.
When those teeth pierce another small cohort and shake it once or twice, it'll let go of it, but that fish is going to die. It's just not going to make it. And you'll lose other trout. You'll have 2 tails and 4 eyes and 2 dead fish, because one will try and take one down head first, and it's too big, and they both die.
Yeah, they both die
all day long in the tank. So the whole battle is to get them onto that dry feed, trying to keep them about the same size as they come up, and then that way they're never going to not be interested in trying to eat another fish. So you're battling it with numbers. You stock. It's called intensive aquaculture. You put as many as you can in.
And hope for the best.
Well, you got to think you're loading a lot of food. Water quality is a big issue with recirculating systems. And also you load it as intensely as you can, feed it as much as you can to not have any problems. And in the end, hopefully have as many fish as possible.
Yeah.
And with everything. So you start to that point, you get through weaning, those are the small fish. Those are the big numbers. Now they're healthy. Get them about 2 inches, then you can release for big numbers. The longer you continue to grow them out to bigger size, the smaller percentage gets from what you originally started with. And so that's one of the things we started working with the Thad Cochran Marine Aquaculture Center for. They have a lot of big recirculating tanks. We're still building a little bit of the infrastructure at Lyman, but this stuff has been in place for a while and was used for a long time ago for their stock enhancement program. So we worked it out. We take some of our day 30, day 40 larvae or fingerlings, and we take them to the research lab, and they continue to grow them out for us. And they'll grow them out in their larger tanks to the 6 to 8 inches. So they're doing that on site after we do the initial larval rearing. We transfer a portion to the research lab, and they grow them out. And these are going to be the ones specifically this year that we tag and release. So the DMR will load up a crew, go to the research lab, and straight from tank to tagging to hauler, and then we'll go release them. And we'll try and tag a huge portion of the fish we brought to the research lab.
Yeah. I've heard through the grapevine that they have some toads in there.
Michael's got a few.
Some big old trout. You got some big old trout in there. I'm sure you're growing them up.
Don't stick your finger in there.
Yeah.
17's the biggest one I ever pulled out of the tank.
Holy moly. I mean, that don't even look like a trout.
Not really, especially growing in a tank. They tend to have a lot more spots. They're a bit stumpier because of just the the tank limits how much they want to grow.
They have more spots in the tank?
It seems to.
I would have guessed the opposite.
I'm not sure, but it does make them look a little different when they get 5 years old and they're that big,
Friggin' long,
and the spots are nickel size. On it.
What about the flounder? Are they as aggressive? Probably nowhere near as aggressive.
Nowhere. Actually, they are. It takes a while. They don't really get aggressive till after metamorphosis. So at about day 30 to 40, when the eye rolls over and they get just a little, start to grow a little more, then they become aggressive because their size changes a lot between each individual after metamorphosis. So with a lot of fish, grading is easy. You remove the larger ones, whether by screen or hand or what. Flounder are very difficult. They're very small. They're flat. They can curl up and go through a tube and be fine on the other end when they're small. So it's very hard to separate a 3.5 inch flounder from a 3/4 inch flounder. Because they just, it's really difficult. And so the longer they're in there together like that, once that size changes enough, the flounder will start to cannibalize each other. But you really don't have much of it till that point. So if you can really pinpoint, maybe about the time you move them to another tank to do your best to grade, that'll help. But once flounder get about 2 inches and they're the same size, you think about their mouth gape and all, they're not really capable of consuming something about the same size. So it's just there's a day 60 to day 100 where the females probably are growing a little bigger than the males just initially. And if it's big enough to get in, they'll take it.
What are the tagging processes on that? Are y'all doing anything on that yet?
Got to it. We
one step at a time.
Okay. I didn't know if y'all were going to do something
we
like
did
that.
our first run. We did really good. We pulled out of the 40 or out of the 60,000 we stocked, we pulled 22,000 out, and then we had about 12,000 up to size. And then as in aquaculture, we had a system failure and lost our little flounder. The ones we went to the research lab, they still have some. I saw them 2 days ago, and they're about 4 inches now, 4 to 6.
That's cool.
From last about 9 months ago, because everything's slow with flounder. They're winter spawners. So everything takes 2 to 3 times as long as it would with sea trout.
What are the numbers on that for the sea trout and the flounder from larva to release?
For numbers as far as size or
time. Sorry, time.
So sea trout, you can almost guarantee an inch a day. You can keep the water a little warmer. They'll grow because they're a little more. They eat a little more, a little more aggressive. So in 30 days, we can get them about 1.5 to 2 inches. and you get about an inch of growth every month after that with the sea trout. Pretty standard. By that time you hit winter, you got your 8-inch fish or so. So flounder, the first 60 days, it won't even get to 3/4 of an inch or hardly an inch. And then by 6 months, you maybe have a 3 to 4-inch flounder. And then the water in your system, because you're doing aquaculture, then you can start to bring your temperature up. With everything with flounder, you have to run them cold for the first 40 days or it'll affect their metamorphosis. It could affect the sex they choose when they go through metamorphosis. So you have to grow them slow, or you could skew the sex they choose or other things they choose when they go through metamorphosis about day 40. So you just have to slow the process down for the first 2 months to a crawl.
Yeah.
Once go through metamorphosis, then you can start to raise the temperature slowly if that's what you want to do, knowing that that's not going to have any effect on whatever the flounder chooses to do sexual wise, as choosing male or female or other things, pigment issues, some things like that.
How big are these flounder when you're releasing them? Did we say that already?
We'd like to get them about 4 inches.
Okay.
And
so you got to put a little more time into the flounder. More effort.
I guess it makes more sense because after the oil spill, flounder disappeared for a while. I mean, they disappeared a good 4 or 5 years. It takes longer to get them up, get the numbers up. Trout were back probably 2 or 3 years, and that makes a whole lot of sense. They got to grow a whole lot slower than the rest of them.
And, your flounder spawn offshore. Sea trout, of course, spawn inshore. So I don't know if the oil spill, that may have affected, considering they all had to go out where the oil spill was to spawn, and where it had a large impact. I guess the oil can wash up on the shore, and a sea trout can maneuver around and find food. Flounder going to be on the sand where the oil is. So
especially when they put the dispersant.
So this is probably a 24/7 man job at the hatchery. Is that kind of what it is? Because if something goes wrong, a pump goes out or
it's from April until probably the 1st of November. It's every day of the week, and then November to January, we can probably get away with only 5 or 6 days a week. We can skip a day here because we're not collecting eggs from sea trout anymore. We haven't started the flounder.
Okay.
So we can have a day go by where the systems hold them.
Now on the flounder, you have released flounder, correct?
We have not.
We have not at all.
No. We did our first strip spawn last year.
Okay. And then
January,
so that's why
January of this year actually is what it would be.
Okay. And that's why we haven't figured out a way or decided how you're going to tag them for the release, right?
No, we haven't. But certainly we'll just probably do the same approach where whatever we have, we'll get to about 4 inches. And if we hopefully have enough numbers, we'll release a batch of those, get some good numbers out, and then hold a portion back to tag and try and figure out the best way to tag.
I mean, the game plan with everything we do from here on out is to, obviously we'll, if the magic number of a flounder to release them, the large numbers of them is 4 inches, we'll do that, or 4, whatever it becomes, but we're going to hold some back. I mean, from here on out, any other species we do, we're going to feel like we're being successful with spotted sea trout. We'll just hold them back, and we just need to see how they react. Because I mean, that's what, if you're still going to get the numbers, the spawn is the spawn. It's going to give you these numbers. They're going to have the same, the mortality, the survival rate, everything like that is going to give you, when you're starting out with 200, 300,000, and you're still going to have the numbers putting out, so everybody's going to see that big number. But we're not necessarily focused. We're not sure if that truly works. What we're focusing on is growing them out, getting that technique down, and seeing how efficient we can. Because logic tells you that growing them out to a larger size, they're going to be a hardier fish. They should have a higher survival rate. So that's what we're focusing on now for everything.
Y'all mentioned y'all do schools, help schools out, agriculture. Do y'all do tours of this if the school wanted to come in? Has that been a process yet?
I'm setting up a tour for Ocean Springs right now for October, but they've come every year for the past 3 to 4 years. They come out, they have they only have their second year students come out. Their first year students haven't started to come yet. But yes, they come out and tour the hatchery. So in mid-September, they're going to get 2,000 sea trout, which came from us. We actually try and involve everybody. So we took our batch to the research lab Tuesday. We brought 48,000 sea trout to the Gulf Coast Research Lab. And since it's close to Ocean Springs, in about 3 weeks, we'll go pick up 2,000 of those and take them to Ocean Springs for their second year students saltwater.
Yeah.
First year students, mid-September, we're going to be bringing them about 2,000 striped bass, hybrid striped bass. That'll go in their first year freshwater and their aquaponic systems where they're growing their cherry tomatoes and those things.
Yeah, it's killer over there. Love did a heck of a job.
So we're doing that with Ocean Springs. They have a bigger infrastructure. We're also doing it with Moss Point this year, but a little bit smaller numbers because they don't quite have as many tanks. But yeah, we bring them their fish. We help them out with any information they need, and then they come out and tour our facility. And we show them around because they are smaller. They get the fish. They just do the base, they're learning. They're learning about aquaculture, about water quality and all the basic things and just in general growing fish in a recirculating system. When they come on site, they get to see the brood stock, how it's
the
made,
whole process,
the eggs, how they're produced. We got the microscope set up and everything for them to really get involved. All the live feeds, the zooplankton, the live Artemia we're growing and all. So they get to experience all that and kind of realize what all it takes just to get their fish that they work with.
Yeah.
Cool. That's very cool.
This man is passionate about his work.
Yeah,
all of them
are.
All of them are because they start throwing out them scientific art and there. I'm like, what? Yeah, but I like it. I like it.
Well, at tours to he said almost, but it was the Mississippi State veterinarian graduate students came down about a month ago to tour around because we never really got into it. We got into stock enhancement, but the Lyman hatchery was needed us to use as much of it as we can, basically for what we deem, purposeful for what we have going on. So in the time I've been there, from helping out with anything, so way back when for the Mississippi Aquarium, they acquired their fish. Their purchase was done. They were ready they had to come get their fish, but the building wasn't built. So we filled up our line ponds with fresh water, and they brought all their sturgeon, their gar, everything.
Sweet.
So for 6 months, all the freshwater fish at the aquarium were at the Lyman hatchery, and then we were able to help them out just to use the space. We've done work with soft shell crab out in our earth ponds. We did that with USM for a while, producing soft shell crabs. With Mississippi State Extension, we just recently did oyster drill projects in some of our wasteways where they could replicate low and high tides, and they were doing stuff with oyster drills. We've done northern clam, which are in the Gulf of Mexico and north, but not around anymore. But we did some work with those, and we've done several things with the Mississippi State Extension, but we have a lot of space, and starting next week, we're actually going to be working with Department of Fish and Wildlife and their dusky gopher frog, which is an endangered frog.
Sweet.
Up near Traditions, they have all their work there with that's a natural habitat for them, and they do a lot of work. So they're kind of losing their space and their support at that site. So they're coming next week, and we have everything, space, all the well water and line ponds, everything that they could need to continue their work with their endangered dusky gopher frog, their Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we're working with them to set up their whole project for that out at the hatchery as well.
Sounds like a killer place.
Yeah.
We need to go check it out. I've never been.
Should.
Come on.
Yeah.
Y'all are more invited, and we try to encourage, obviously with the schools, we can't bring, someone else every day, and we try to somewhat limit it to the aquaculture programs of the school.
Right.
Obviously, we're going to bend over backwards. I mean, if they want to come view that facility, anyone that wants to do that, we try to. The universities, obviously, because just some of the work that they're doing is interesting to us, and it goes with the mission of the DMR. So some of the things that they're learning, we're learning along with them. So obviously that and the new venture with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, obviously that was something that we're excited about because we don't know anything about it, but we're going to get to see something different, and it's the utilization of the space that we have and the resources that we have out there. So it's obviously there's a lot of things going on out there. That's what I was trying to drive home in the beginning. It's not just spotted sea trout stock enhancement. We're not.
Yeah.
We try to do as many different projects as we can, encourage as many the variety of projects that people want to bring to us. Obviously, we'll vet them and try to create a space for them. But it is a state facility, and it's a state resource, and we're trying to utilize it to the best of everyone's interests and abilities.
I like it.
Yeah.
To kind of bring things around full circle from where we started, though, you mentioned in the beginning doing all this, not wanting Mississippi to fall behind or not be in the conversation. How do we stack up now? This program's going on with, I'm assuming Louisiana and Alabama and what they're doing. Are we in line with them? Do y'all communicate with them?
Well, in line's a strange process, because one thing with our aquaculture community in other states, there's really no border as far as the water. We work hand in hand with flounder and sea trout with Alabama DNR. We work with Louisiana. We've traded larvae, we've traded eggs, we've traded brood stock when somebody's having trouble or they need help. Louisiana, but when you talk Texas, you got to think larger, bigger budgets, and things. The scale of some of the other places.
Y'all share information though.
We're open books all the time. Conferences, we all get together and what are you doing good? What's working? Never a lack of sharing information. We are all doing somewhat similar things, but all because it's tried and true and what works, but. Alabama's going to put out sea trout and flounder. We're going to put out sea trout and flounder. So is Texas for sure. So is Florida. And so we want to, like I said, keep pace and do our part. And I think right now we're doing, for the size of Mississippi compared to some of the other budgets, we're doing more than our part. We're doing really well.
That's cool. Sweet. So the species are kind of stayed at the same there with those two. It doesn't vary very much.
No, well, those are the two that really have the most interest in sport recreation.
Okay.
You have redfish that come next, but people always seem to like, if I want to go catch a redfish, I can.
Right.
Right. You can walk on them things.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of stay with what other states are doing, because they all have the CCAs and the support, and it's really about pressure everywhere on the Gulf Coast. It's sea trout. That's the big one. And then flounder next. We used to do work with snapper, but that's pretty costly to try and do stock enhancement of snapper. And so it's just been better to leave it alone and let the regulations and all handle that and not get too involved. But these are all species other states prioritize, and we do as well. But like I said, it's based on pressure and public interest of these high quality table fare.
There you go.
And also you got, like I said earlier, it's just because we call it stock enhancement and that's what everybody, latches on to. It's not, we're not doing this to necessarily because we think the stocks are in trouble. There's nothing that we can do that Mother Nature can't do a whole lot better than we can.
Right.
It's just a nice tool to have in the toolbox to sit there in case that need ever does arise. I mean, obviously
another oil spill.
Something. Obviously, we're having some banner years right now, and sometimes you have the ebbs and flows of nature and your stocks. And right now we're seeing some good stocks right now, but something may happen to change that, and this may be something in the future that can help to slow that down. Obviously, it's going to take the turn. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
But we could slow it down. So
at least you'll be up to par and have some data on your side and some techniques down
techniques
rather than starting from zero.
Yeah, you can start to supplement it and then implement some regulation changes if needed, but and allow them time to actually work. I mean, regulation changes don't work like that. I mean, they take time.
Yeah. Years.
I mean, spotted sea trout is a prime example. We went from 14 to 13 and we saw a decline. We went from 13 to 15 and we're seeing rebounds. I mean, for a lot more reasons than just the regulation, but it takes years. But if you can enhance, it helps the regulation kick in and because it does take years for regulations to actually make a difference.
I like it. I like it. Well, look, we always appreciate y'all stopping by here, giving us the knowledge and hanging out. These have become one of our favorite parts of doing the show, is talking to you and, hearing y'all's side of things and what y'all are doing, the science behind everything. So we appreciate y'all stopping by. Looking forward to doing more of these in the future. So
thank y'all for having us.
We appreciate it. Absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching on the live. We got some cool stuff coming up. You got anything off the top of your head you can think of? Love putting you on the spot.
We got Neptune barbecue. We got some tackle guys coming in. We got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So just stay tuned. Make sure you download the Brown Water Banter app if you don't already have it. You'll stay up to date to all the stuff that we got right there. You can check out our merch, like Joey's hat right over there. You can buy it on the website and help support the show. So if y'all keep tuning in, we'll keep doing them. We'll see you on the next one.
Later.